Let's go to our Lagos studio where Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Falana, has been with us. Thank you so much indeed. Let us seek for your time tonight. Give us your view. I mean, it's a momentous legal event, isn't it? When the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal will be sitting tomorrow, what are your thoughts about the happenings around it, the pressure on the judiciary, and some of the issues that have been raised?
You mean on Wednesday, not tomorrow?
Wednesday, rather, apologies. Yeah.
Well, we've been having election petitions since the colonial era. But none has attracted such level of blackmail and intimidation of the judiciary. Just last Friday, we were at a program in Abuja together where I addressed the labor unions. Some dubious characters got a copy of the video cassette and they put on top, in a very criminal manner, that if the judiciary fails the Nigerian people, there should be a coup. As if I said that only a deranged mind could have concocted such a treasonable statement. Now, that is the kind of intimidation that is going on. And I am worried. You know, that people give the impression that everything ends with the judgment of the Court of Appeal, the Presidential Election Tribunal. Any party that loses on Wednesday still has the opportunity to appeal to the Supreme Court. And so why? What is the basis of the cheap blackmail that is going on? And I want to pitch
this time around, since this is not the first time, Mr. Falana,
yes.
Why is it now that people are having this skepticism and this kind of the outrage against the judiciary? Why?
No, some of the people involved are voting for the first time, and they believe, rightly or wrongly, that their candidate must be declared the winner. And I think that is what is going on. Whether you like it or not, our candidate must be declared the winner. And that is not what election petition tribunals are all about. It is for them, the justices, to look at the evidence adduced by the parties, apply the law, and give a decision. As they say, even if the heavens will fall, and the heavens won't fall anyway, the judges must not be intimidated. They must give their decisions, regardless of blackmail or intimidation. Convinced that they can justify their judgment. That is what is required by them. To examine the evidence, apply the law, and deliver a decision. One way or the other. Some will win, some will lose. But those who lose, in the case, who are aggrieved, will have another opportunity to approach the Supreme Court and demonstrate how the Court of Appeal has erred.
So, I mean, where do we go from here? Does the judiciary need to do anything in this respect when these kind of issues are being raised by some segment of the populace?
No, I think the judiciary has been extremely careful not to join issues with those who have threatened, intimidated, or blackmailed judges. I mean, in some other clime, in Ghana, for instance, the law of contempt will have been applied. So I think our judges have been quite mature. and they must take their maturity to their decision, must apply the maturity to their decision by scrutinizing the evidence laid before them, apply the law, electoral law of our country, and ensure that they come out with a decision they can defend. That's all. Again, as I said, whoever is dissatisfied on Wednesday will have the opportunity to go to the Court of Appeal. It can be either way. I mean, election petition tribunals have delivered judgments in this country. And sometimes those you think you win, lost. And for me, I want to appeal to Nigerians to allow the due process of law to take its course.
I mean, if there is one thing, Mr. Falana, after the 2023 election, going into the election tribunal, that you think, after all said and done, should be fixed in our electoral law and jurisprudence, what would that be?
Well, for me, I have advocated this publicly. Once the election petitions are concluded, we certainly will have to go back to the drawing table and perhaps turn our attention to some other African countries. For instance, in majority of African countries, election petitions of a presidential nature, the presidential election petitions are concluded within 14 days. That is an area we have to review. I mean, we have to look at. And in order to fast track the decisions of our election petition tribunal, we will need to embrace technology completely. The accreditation of voters through the Beavers machine will have to be perfected, and election results will have to be uploaded and transmitted to the central server of the electoral body, whether it's INEC or state electoral commissions, that conduct the worst elections in Africa, where all the candidates of the ruling party, the chairmanship candidates and the councillorship candidates, must be won. The seats must be won by the ruling party in every state in Nigeria. So we must embrace technology like other African countries so that our election will be devoid of rancor. As it is the case now, for me, those are issues we'll have to take to the drawing table. Now, the other issue is the question of the appointment of the management staff of our electoral bodies. The Ways panel had recommended, the Justice Muhammad Ways panel had recommended that electoral chiefs be appointed by advertisement. And at the end of the day, those who are shortlisted will be sent to the National Judicial Council that will interview them and recommend the best candidates to the president, who would then take the names to the to the Senate. Again, we have to look at that. So that the allegations
let's take a breather quickly, Mr. Falana. Yeah? Okay.
The allegations of partiality, will be eliminated or reduced substantially.
Let's take a breather, Mr. Falana. And when we come back, now the president is going to India, and he brings to my mind again the issue of the dollarization of the Nigerian economy. One issue that you have talked about severally, the issue of the swap, the currency swap, and what we are doing in terms of investment and how the rule of law is being neglected in many cases the CBN Act that has provided on how some of these things should be operated. We'll be looking at some of these issues after the break. Join us again, everyone. Thanks so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. Let's get back to the conversation. Mr. Femi Falana, rights activist, senior advocate of Nigeria, is in our Lagos studio speaking with us on some of the very crucial matters bordering on the state of the nation. Thank you so much, Mr. Falana, for your time tonight. The president is off to India later tonight. And when we wonder, the BRICS Commission is there. We've seen some new entrants into that association, and now we are having the president being invited by the Indian president. You heard what Mr. Ngelale, the president's spokesperson, said about what the president plans to do. But for you, what would you say should be the priority of Nigeria leader as of today?
You mean in terms of the trip, what to expect from India?
In terms of the trip, absolutely, yes. In the deliverable, the benefit to Nigerians.
For me, I think the delegation led by the president, and I'm talking of the official delegation, will have to address the crisis inflicted on the country by the IMF and World Bank that are desperate to have Nigeria run as a peripheral capitalist system country. So we must get out of the dominance of the dollar, the domination of our economy by the dollar. And the president will be required to engage the Indian government, his colleague in India, the Prime Minister Modi, to see what can be done by way of a currency swap between India and Nigeria. Just last week, early last week, India bought crude oil to the tune of about $1 billion from UAE, imported crude oil worth $1 billion. India paid rupees, its own currency. And that is what the BRICS, members of the BRICS, have introduced to the global economy, i.e. that you can trade in your own currencies. And for me, that is an area the president will have to address in India. It's so crucial. India also buys our oil. Even if you don't want to go to the radical extent of saying, buy my oil and pay in naira, but you can still insist, you can still have an arrangement whereby you can avoid trading in dollars. And that is what some countries are doing. And some of them are in the G20. And happily, the Western countries read the position of the United States yesterday and Germany that we're not opposed to the BRICS. We're not opposed to countries trading among themselves in their own currencies. So we should take advantage of this trip. The president should take advantage of the trip to enter into a currency swap with India. Because India has a India has the largest population in the world today. We must also learn from how India has been able to
it seems that we're getting some interferences with the microphone with Mr. Falana, but of course I know that our engineers are on top of that. I mean, you have said it, not only the fact that it does make some economic or it does make some sense, common sense that is, to do that, but also is the fact that in Nigeria, and one of the issues that you have raised in the past is the fact that using dollar at every point that is that we find is something that you have referred to as an illegal scenario
Yes.
And perhaps one thing that the Bola Tinubu government needs to pay attention to, isn't it?
Yes, because you mentioned the rule of law. The rule of law is total. It means compliance with the Constitution and the provisions of other extant laws, including the Central Bank Act. Section 20 of the Central Bank Act has criminalized transacting any business in any foreign currency in Nigeria. So you cannot spend dollars in Nigeria to purchase houses, to collect rents, school fees, even government, some of the agencies of the government, like, customs, NIMASA, MPA, and the rest of them, charge dollars for services rendered by the government. This is unacceptable. And that is why there is so much pressure on the dollar. And that is why our economy, tied to the dollar, is in crisis. And we must arrest the ugly development, the dangerous development. And showing all this, no government official, no official of the central bank has challenged the fact that between Nigeria and China, we have a currency swap agreement that is valid and subsisting. But contrary to that agreement, and to the detriment of the economy, imports from India, China last year, were valued at $22 billion. All that should have been paid for in naira as opposed to dollars. So the central bank officials will have to be called to order by the regime, by the Bola Tinubu administration, to save the naira, to strengthen the naira by ensuring that nobody, including airlines operating in Nigeria, no organization, no individual is allowed to spend dollars in Nigeria or any other foreign currency. Apart from China, the central bank entered into an agreement with the Central Bank of China to defend that Nigerians who spend dollars and naira will buy goods in naira in your country. For your own business in Nigeria, you will transact your business in Nigeria in yuan. So that's an agreement. And so we must take advantage of that agreement.
Let me get your view quickly on the issue of the rule of law. What is happening with Emefiele? Mr. Bawa, the suspended EFCC chairman, and those who have raised questions as to how the Bola Tinubu government had handled some of these legal matters. As a senior lawyer in the country, your very good friend, Mr. Fagbemi, is the Attorney General of the Federation. What are your views as to the role of the DSS, the continued detention of Mr. Bawa, the EFCC chairman, some of the allegations or the charges against Mr. Emefiele, and some of the scenario of how they handle the state of affairs when they were in office?
Well, I have advised the government publicly that no citizen should be detained without trial. And if you have no evidence against any citizen in detention, you must release him or her. I've made that statement with respect to Mr. Emefiele and Bawa. But left for majority of Nigerians, we should just leave them on the ground that when they were in power, when they had the opportunity to comply with court orders, they treated them with contempt. I'm sure you could recall the currency notes. The design of the currency notes, whereby on February 8th last year, the Supreme Court gave a judgment, which the central bank not only disregarded, but came out to say, we ain't going to comply with the judgment of the Supreme Court. No institution since 1914 has been so bold and irresponsible to say we are not going to obey the judgment of the Supreme Court. That happened, but notwithstanding such acts of executive lawlessness, the state must operate at a higher pedestal by ensuring that court orders are obeyed, that the rule of law, that the government operates under the rule of law, because the government rules by law. And so the Attorney General, the new Attorney General, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, said, unlike the previous Attorney General, immediate past Attorney General, Mr. Malami Abubakar, who said publicly, we're not going to obey all court orders in the interest of national security. But Mr. Fagbemi has said, we are going to ensure that this government operates under the rule of law. So we had a meeting with the National Human Rights Commission, and we have agreed that all judgments of courts that are not being obeyed be compiled so that they can be sent to the office of the Attorney General with a view to ensuring compliance with them. And that is how to run a government that is anchored under the rule of law.
All right, Mr. Falana, let's anchor on this point. The Nigerian Labour Congress says is going on a 2-day warning strike. The DSS had also come out to say there are plans for disruption of the peace in the country. There was a statement from the DSS in that respect. And there are those who will say, I mean, you heard what the spokesperson of the president has said in respect of the manner in which NLC had conducted itself. Now, the president is going off to India. This issue of the subsidy is really causing a lot of political governance issue. How do you think the Bola Tinubu government should handle this? The pain and the plight of Nigerians are there, which is germane in all of these issues.
You see, unfortunately, we're at this stage again. For the past 2 months, the government and Labour, 2 months ago, the government and Labour embraced dialogue. Unfortunately, except where there is a threat to strike, the body set up by the government has never really come up with any solutions, or rather, for instance, the government had agreed to increase the national minimum wage because of the crisis caused by removal of fuel subsidy. And the government has also agreed to address many areas up to today. And I'm not talking of the federal government alone. The state governments are all involved in ensuring that these challenges in the country, facing workers and facing other citizens who are disadvantaged, are addressed. Whereas the government has announced palliatives of 5 billion naira per state, in the majority of the states, apart from that announcement, nothing has gone to the people. So people are complaining. And the labor movement has taken it upon itself, long before now, to defend the interests of Nigerian workers and the generality of our people. The challenge before the government is to continue the discussions, rather belated discussions, started today. And I expect the government to have a sleepless night to work out an arrangement, call governors, the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, and call all the relevant stakeholders to have this matter addressed today, tonight. But threatening or saying that, you are going to have a breach of the peace. I beg your pardon. What peace are you talking about? The peace of the graveyard for the majority of our oppressed people. It's the peace of the graveyard. So, and of course, the labor leaders are not going on protests on the street. There's no protests on the street this time around. So the question of saying, oh, some people are organizing protests, rallies to disrupt the peace of the country. It's not there. What is there? And the state security service must advise the government, address the problem that is leading to a strike. And that is the best way to handle this matter. And it can be done tonight.
Thank you so much indeed. Thank you so much, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you so much. Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and human rights lawyer. Thank you so much indeed for your thoughts on these very critical issues.